Just home switch reaction. This is how Bradley IFVs prove more useful in Ukraine than tanks. By the channel, not what you think. Yeah, this is not what you think video. It's a great channel. Talks about topics like this. I like his thing of going on the boats himself and filming, which he did recently. What was that, like amphibious type of boat, which was really good. I hope he goes to like something like aircraft carriers and things like that, submarines. Actually goes into submarine when submarines below water. I don't know if they would allow him to do that or not, but yeah. But this is about Bradley IFVs. Infantry fighting vehicle. Yeah, I saw the fight attrition video on it and many other as well, task and purpose and other. Like Bradley IFVs are really insane. I wouldn't never ever thought of that there is such thing as IFVs. I always saw those things like, oh wait a minute, this different type of tank. I always assume that it's a tank. But no, the tank is supposed to be something that you use to attack with some crew. Its purpose is to attack using its cannon. IFV's purpose is to transport troops one place to another while having defenses and attack on it. Now, as far as I remember, Bradley IFV has weapons on it that has higher range than modern tanks like M1 Abrams and things like this, even better weapons. But maybe they're so expensive and like complicated, you can't use that as a tank, I guess. So I don't know. But maybe Bradley IFVs are really useful in Ukraine because US like fuck money and just like pouring the ammunition or IFVs and they're just using it like that. Even then, like how are you gonna load it? I'm pretty sure loading capacity is also low. That's not how logistics works. So, I don't know. Maybe it's useful because I don't know, it's IFV. And if I were to think between Russia and Ukraine war, it's mostly invasion rather than being a war. One part is defending, one part is completely point blank attacking. I mean, yeah, that's how wars work, obviously. But in this case, it's like one is like a real underdog, one is not. Underdog is being supplied by the world and West mostly. So with this kind of thing, it sometimes becomes like a guerrilla warfare type of thing. One small area sometimes sees action and then other areas sees action. There are ambushes and things. So I guess IFVs are better at that than tanks. But I don't know. Tanks are like point blank major war with trenches and everything, like big battlefield, multiple tanks with like support infantry supporting it. That's when tank shines. So maybe that's the case. But yeah, we're gonna see. Let's watch it. Remember, if you like my reaction, don't forget to subscribe so I know which type of videos to react to more. I've been watching Know What You Think type of videos a lot. So if you haven't seen them, check out the link in the description or in the end of the video end card. YouTube recommends it well, I guess. Yeah, let's watch it.
Come a long way from their early days of crossing trenches and dodging landmines. The most capable tanks of today, like the Leopard and Abrams, with their heavy guns and targeting systems, more and more resemble battleships crawling on land. The question is whether these behemoths, which have dominated the battlefield for over a century, are going extinct, or are they just evolving into something smaller? This question is posed by the war in Ukraine, where tanks are proving more vulnerable than ever, and that's due to technologies like the Javelin launchers and FPV drones. In Ukraine, the traditional tactics of open-field tank battles are proving less and less viable, with armored casualties mounting on both sides due to far more cost-effective methods such as ambushes and...
See, like I said, like open field attack type of thing doesn't happen in Ukraine, at least not now. One day it might just escalate at a level like it's now or never, and just like both sides would attack like that, tanks might be useful then. Right now it's not the case, I guess.
And anti-tank infantry. But from these heavy losses, a new strategy is emerging for armored warfare. Light and fast. Both the Russians and Ukrainians have begun to use lighter vehicles for their operations in the flat eastern steppe of Ukraine. One class of vehicles specifically, the Infantry Fighting Vehicle or IFV, is stealing the spotlight from the heavier main battle tanks, and for good reasons. But why tanks need to lose weight, not so they can go faster, but to stay relevant. How the M1 Abrams gained its legendary status somewhat unfairly, and why IFVs are stealing the spotlight in the Ukraine war to the extent that having Bradleys might be more effective than having F-16s is not what you think. The legendary status of the Abrams main battle tank.
Having Bradley is better than F-16s? Those two roles are different. What does that mean? Like you need air superiority. I'm pretty sure nobody has air superiority around that time. If they had, things would be much different. I'm pretty sure that's the case.
tanks were cemented over 30 years ago in a battle during the Persian Gulf War between the United States and Iraq. This engagement, known as the Battle of Medina Ridge, lasted 2 hours, during which the US Army forces annihilated almost 200 Iraqi T-72 tanks while losing only 4 Abrams tanks. Early on after the battle, many historians would go on to credit the superior armor and targeting technology of the Abrams for this resounding success. But there is one pretty big detail that's often left out about this battle, which is that the Americans had total air supremacy and could use their A-10 Warthogs and AH-64 Apaches to overwhelm the Iraqi tanks. It is this detail that is missing today in Ukraine, since neither the Russians nor the Ukrainians can mount and maintain a continuous air campaign for air supremacy. For the Russians, it's a lack of resources and parts to maintain their aircraft, while for the Ukrainians, it's a lack of aircraft and qualified pilots to fly them. Without air superiority, protecting tanks from infantry ambushes and anti-tank weapons is difficult, since there's no element of suppression or reconnaissance from the air. But there's also another wrinkle with protecting tanks. Even with air supremacy.
Alright, first of all, the whole thing about air supremacy thing. Look, I don't know what to think on that. Like, Ukraine is like, nobody was even thinking as a military power about Ukraine. So, Ukraine side makes sense. How Ukraine doesn't have air superiority. How the fuck Russia doesn't have it? Right? I mean, all the people like talk about in the comments how Russia is a paper tiger, this and that. And I always think like there is more complexity than that, right? What was the video who said that? Like, there was an F-22 video I saw, like how F-22 is good because computers solve things, everything. Because without that, like, if something goes wrong, everything can go wrong, and even the most powerful one can be nothing, basically. Computers, level that out. That made me think, like, doesn't matter how powerful you are, if you are just in just bad conditions, somehow certain people made a mistake and it's just like bad logistics and everything, even if you're like really powerful, everything can go wrong for you. I understand that. Maybe that's the case with Russia. Maybe Russia is really powerful. Maybe Russia is powerful as we thought, like top 2 power, one US, one Russia. Maybe Russia is that powerful. How the fuck you don't have air superiority? That's where I get like, okay, I don't know about that. Okay, like he said, like, enough resources. But if you didn't have resources, why did you attack? You're the attacking party. You choose the date. It was up to you when to attack. You attack around that time. You didn't have resources. I don't know, man. Right? I always give like benefit to doubt everyone, right? So whenever like I think, only thing I can think is that Russia is that powerful, but people below Putin are not telling him the thing he wants to hear out of fear. Right? And Putin thought that they're ready, they're war ready, they have resources, and it turns out they don't. So if anything, this war will open Putin's eyes, like his own people is afraid of him and not gonna tell him the truth. That is the only thing I can come to conclusion to. Because Russia would have air superiority, let's be honest. The resources are the only thing, and if they didn't have resources, why did they attack? It's because Putin probably didn't know. Nobody told him. Everybody was afraid of him, that was the thing, because I can only imagine the people like, oh, should we tell him that we don't have resources? No, he'll scream at us, basically. I don't know, or worse. So I think that's the reason. I don't know.
Superiority, the development of drones has made it nearly impossible for tanks to hide on the battlefield, since operators can fly low-profile commercial drones and spot them from anywhere. Once a tank is spotted, it's easy for enemy soldiers to use anti-tank weapons or another drone to take it out, which has led to the steady losses of tanks since the start of the conflict. But
that was a small drone. When they say drone, I always assume those military level big ass drones that worth some millions, like big thing, right? I didn't know they used like Amazon drones or something. They have a small drone with a small... What is this? Dick Dastardly move? This is insane. This is becoming cartoon. Like small drone with a small bomb. That's enough. This is insane, man.
Because armor is becoming more vulnerable doesn't mean it's becoming obsolete. And it's with these changing conditions that vehicles like the American M2 Bradley and the Russian BMP-3 are beginning to shine. Even though the news would have you believe that the answer to all of Ukraine's troubles is F-16s and Abrams super tanks, the truth is really something less extreme. This is because the
That's
Russo-Ukrainian
it. Just have F-16 M1 Abrams. You want the war. That's how easy it is. That's how easy war works. That's why you need biggest chain of command, right? Because it's that easy.
war is a slow crawl of attrition rather than the typical short shock conflicts common in the 21st century. And in a war of attrition, preserving infantry is a critical objective. That's why the Bradley infantry fighting vehicle has become the star of the show for Ukrainian forces, with some even claiming they owe their lives to its support. Since January 2023, the United States has been sending variants of the M2 Bradley to support Ukrainian counteroffensive operations, and reports from soldiers who have both driven and ridden inside the IFVs have begun to reveal its exceptional abilities to resist mines, attack drones, and mortars, which gives us a clue about these vehicles' real purpose in Ukraine.
Even mines.
Since troop movements and vehicle movements are now so hard to conceal from drones, the factor that contributes to an operation's success is the survivability of the movement. This was the purpose for the Bradley's development in the first place, as a troop carrier that can safely deliver and disembark infantry to the site of a battle. But how does Bradley keep his passengers safe? And how come its survivability is better?
Hold up, did that guy just got a cramp? What was that? Wait a minute, let's see it again.
But how does Bradley keep his passengers safe? And how come its survivability is better than most tanks currently in combat? Well, it's for a combination of reasons. First, the Bradley's main focus is to preserve the lives of its passengers, so the Ukrainian variant uses the Bradley Urban Survival Kit, or BUSK for short. BUSK gives the vehicle a high-intensity spotlight, a wire mesh to protect the optics, non-conductive arched strips of nylon for downed power line protection, additional armor on the underside with integral reactive armor, and internal anti-spalding lining to prevent shell and armor fragments from injuring passengers. The BUSK variant also comes with software for detecting when components and sensors are damaged, along with a training simulator to help prepare the gunner. Second, the Bradley is not an attractive of a target during offensive engagements when supported by heavier tanks, since its weapons are mainly intended to support its infantry passengers while they disembark. This leads the enemy to focus on the surrounding vehicles with more firepower, resulting in lower Bradley casualties when supported by heavier armor.
That makes sense, right? I mean, tank is a tank, right? Regardless of what you think. Tank is always going to be a threat. So when you see like 3-4 tanks come in with 2-3 Bradleys, you're probably going to attack tanks. You could see like, wait a minute, Bradley's really successful. People are the issue. Let's attack Bradleys. Okay, now your tank that knows your location is just there. With what, 120mm cannons, 150mm cannons, depending on the tank? What the fuck, T-90s and things like that? That's insane. I don't know if T-90 is like the main thing, main tanks use or whatever. But yeah, something like that, right? And this makes me think like, because of this like skirmishes type of element where ambushes happens a lot, in very small areas they attack, this is the reason they're using T-14. Because T-14, just like the same way how tanks are not working, T-14 is made to use as a tank like that. And if they use T-14 right now and just by ambushes T-14 gets like attacked or damaged, or just like people can just like, oh look at that, T-14 is nothing, this and that. This is not into like full blown like open battlefield like massive approach war where tanks shine. If that happens, they'll probably use T-14, but right now it's just like they don't want the name to go bad.
Finally, the Bradley is fast and agile. It can go up to 40 miles per hour and runs on a torsion bar suspension. Its use of aluminum in the chassis and armor means a lighter impact when crossing rough terrain, which decreases the risk of damage during high-speed, sudden maneuvers. With this agility, the driver and gunner of Bradley can focus on staying on the move when in combat, which decreases the chances of being destroyed by a drone or anti-tank missile. And when the Bradley eventually runs into a tank, it has a trick up its sleeve to survive even that. A tow missile launcher capable of handling almost any tank the Bradley might face in Ukraine.
What does it mean wireless guided? Doesn't that thing has a wire? I remember it having wire. Like it's such a long wire, and when you attack, it has a wire that goes behind it that you somehow they control. I don't know, so it doesn't get hacked or something. I don't know, like wire is more accurate. As we know, there's a reason why broadbands are really fast compared to anything else. I'm pretty sure it had a wire, right? That was the one thing I saw, like, what the fuck? That is so insane. They removed the wire now, is that it? I guess for this, they probably realized, like, let's not use wire or something.
The design of the Bradley is not an entirely original concept, however. In fact, the main reason why the US focused so heavily on developing the infantry fighting vehicle platform was in response to the Soviet Union's BMP series of vehicles. Though not nearly as complex in design as today's Western IFVs, the Soviet BMP-1 was a revolutionary concept when it was first introduced in the late 1960s. Designed with aggressively sloped frontal armor and a low-profile silhouette, it kept troops relatively safe from small arms fire and artillery fragments. This was a product of the Soviets' experience in World War II, where safe movement of troops alongside main battle tanks proved critical in overwhelming the enemy.
I mean, knowing how many people died from Russia in World War II, yeah, their first approach was probably like how to protect troops, because now we have to. Even in the Soviet time where they're like, off to the mines, even then, like, okay, wait a minute, we're losing way too many people. I'm pretty sure Germans were the first with the infantry vehicle thing. Obviously, like they are usually with the World War II and basically Nazis or something like that. In the World War II, they were the first kind of doing that. And then Russians just basically expanded from that, right? And then Americans with the Bradleys. Bradleys are insane because of all the tax that basically makes sense how Americans work. But yeah, every time I see Bradley video, it's like so good, right? It's so nimble. You can just, if you want to use that as a small tank, I'm pretty sure all the room that has inside of the people, you can just add a proper weapon to it. I don't like 80 millimeter, some small rather than big one. 80, 50 millimeter cannon, no, 80 millimeter cannon, let's just say. 50 is just 80 millimeter cannon or something. With 2-3 people can obviously stay inside. It can become a tank in itself. It's already a tank. When I think of tank is something that takes damage. Or at least that's the gamer mentality, right? So it's already a tank in that way. You can just need to add just a cannon, big cannon, that's it. I'm pretty sure they can modify it if need to be.
The design of BMP-1 also focused on simplicity, since it was meant to be produced in mass numbers. Along with the BMP-2 and BMP-3, BMP-1 is the most common vehicle on the battlefield in Ukraine, since the
people are having dinner, just eating, and so it just goes by. Don't mind me, just have your dinner. I'll be through here.
BMP series is used by both sides of the war. So, if the IFVs are the main character in this modern war, why does everyone talk about tanks so much? Well, the first reason is because Russia has a lot of tanks, and I mean a lot. Many analysts believe that Russia has around 1,300 modern battle tanks in active service, but nearly 10,000 older and technically obsolete tanks in reserve. While these thousands of vintage T-62s and T...
I mean, obsolete, I wouldn't say obsolete, right? Old tanks are obsolete in a way, sure. But in number, nothing is obsolete. Like, if you can use tens of thousands, or suddenly, fuck it. Everybody gets a tank, and just 10,000, 20,000 people just gets a tank. Pretty sure they just need 2 people to operate, right? Because auto-loader thing. So there you go, 10,000 tanks attack. That would be a problem. Numbers are a problem, I don't know. But the point is, are they in working condition? Or just like all catching rust or something?
T-55s may not be up to today's tank standards. They still have heavier armor and weaponry than any IFV out there today. So the best way to fight a tank is still with another tank. Javelins and drones are strong defensive anti-tank weapons, but during an offensive operation, heavy tanks are needed to push through the enemy's defense. The second reason is that tanks provide a significant advantage in urban combat, since they're more likely to survive combat within a city due to their heavier armor and cannon, which is significantly more effective against building positions. So for Ukraine, more heavy battle tanks means more resources to push back the occupying Russian forces. But tanks are always changing, because the design of a tank is a constant push and pull between the mission a tank is built for and how well it survives that mission. For example, Western tanks like the Abrams, Challenger, and Leopard all have a common design layout, a large turret and wide body, which makes them a large target.
Okay, who was the first with this kind of a design, right? This kind of a thing with the long back like that. This is, I always associate this with the Abrams, right? The big back thing with a cannon. I mean, how powerful of a cannon it is that it needs that, or is it like a counterbalance or something? Every time I see this, probably Abrams, but no, it's like many other NATO ally tanks also. It looks like this apparently.
They are fast, but heavy, and they drink fuel like crazy. Russian tanks focus more on reducing their silhouette. They are lower to the ground and have small turrets, many of which replace a crew member with an auto-loading device. Both Western and Russian tanks operate in direct combat, generally in standalone formations and with the intention of clearing the way for a combat infantry force. But with the lack of consistent air support in Ukraine, this doctrine has been difficult to implement. So tanks are currently taking on more flexible missions, like probing attacks and reconnaissance. With these developments, many countries are beginning to turn toward finding the middle ground between IFVs and tanks. Two examples of this are the newest American tank, the M10 Booker, and China's Type 15.
I'm sorry, every time I see it's like absurd. I see that everywhere, right? People start something with small long time ago, they make bigger and bigger, it becomes really bigger, and then wait a minute, we need it smaller. Go back to making something that was already there before, obviously with newer technology. I see that in motorcycles a lot. Somebody starts with 200cc bike as a smaller segment, slowly 250, 300, 350, 400, all the way to 500 before they wait a minute, we become too big and back to 200 or something. This cycle happens a lot. Same thing here, right? They're probably going to make smaller tanks that resembles like what 80 years ago how the tanks was, obviously with newer technology, but still. Yeah, I mean, you need a nimble tank, especially in today's world. You need a really nimble tank. I'm sure in the future, tanks are going to be really fast. Like they're going to have insane torque, so they can just maneuver fast and take turns and instantly accelerate because of all the like locking technology that is increasing, right? Auto locking, like how javelins work. Imagine if some tank was so faster, javelin can't lock onto it if tank realizes a javelin is coming, right? It's like driving a car or something. If tank becomes that kind of nimble, obviously that's like a big ass feat. It's not easy to do, but I can imagine that happening in the future. Speed is going to be important, I guess, and obviously technology to realize that you're under attack or something.
With the US Army's M10, the focus has been weight loss, with a new standard weight of 38 metric tons, nearly half of the Abrams' 67 tons. This weight reduction for the Booker is because the Abrams tank is too heavy for airborne doctrine and cannot be transported very easily. The new M10 also features a slightly smaller 105mm gun, rather than the M1's new 120mm cannon. With this, the Booker has access to a wider variety of shell types.
I mean, I understand how diameters work, so 105 compared to 120, it is smaller than you think. You think like, oh wait a minute, 105 versus 120, that's like 15mm, but now with the diameter is like difference, right? It's not the same as like just 15mm, no. Every 5mm is just like become bigger, my volume becomes even bigger, I know that. But still like 105, that's not that small. I mean, that's all right. I'm pretty sure it can, I don't know, what do you call like, per minute it can shoot a lot of, shells compared to the Abrams. It's probably nimble. So who knows, certain scenario Booker might be more effective than M1 Abrams. Pretty sure it's not going to have defenses of M1 Abrams. Because of its reduced size, you also have to reduce a lot of things.
Since 105mm is far more common among NATO tanks than 120mm shells. These specs are incredibly similar to the Chinese Type 15, which also uses a 105mm gun and reportedly weighs 33 to 36 metric tons. Much of the reasoning behind the design of these two tanks is similar. Since the lighter a tank is, the easier it is to transport it to and from the battlefield. Lighter tanks also have advantages when operating at higher altitudes, since their engines need less oxygen to power the vehicle. They are also much easier for amphibious transports to land on beaches. Even beyond these two tanks, some IFVs are also getting closer in design to the tank. Take for example the new German Puma IFV, which is an improvement on the Marder class and uses an autoloading turret. Just like the M10 and the Type 15, this armored fighting vehicle blurs the operational line between troop carrier and armored support. All these newer vehicles point to the same direction in doctrine for the militaries of the future: light, mobile warfare centered around supporting infantry operations. So, are the mammoth tanks going extinct? The answer is no, at least for now. Mostly because they're still highly effective at defending positions and...
Not for now, never. Try never, it will never go out of fashion. Just, if you like separate roles, you make a lighter tanks to do lighter jobs. Now you will have specific tanks for specific jobs. Like, now look, Tiger, right? Tiger, that's the one? Yeah, Tiger from World War II. It was feared for one reason. It was like twice as range as the opposing one. It was like massive tank and armor-wise, right? People used to like afraid, like, is there a Tiger tank hiding in some bushes or something, right? It was Tiger, right? Or am I mixing it up? A German one, right? So there was a reason why there was a real fear of the Tiger tank in World War II. Now, logistically, if you see the whole thing and how like Tiger was like had limitation and all that shit, yeah, hindsight is different than actual thing. When you're on the, all the people were there fighting were afraid of Tiger for a reason, because it had twice as high range because of his big cannon, and he was like hiding bushes or some shit, right? So I can imagine like bigger tank getting even bigger, even, you know, heavy armor. So like no gun out there can basically damage it like that easily, right? Even if it gets shot. Big ass cannon, way too big, basically with insane big ammunition that can just like one shoot can take AoE damage. There's a say video game wise, they can not just destroy a tank but everything around it type of way, and it has very specific purpose. You use that tactically, whatever, you know, ground generals or whatever, they use that very tactically. Put it in places where you need defenses. You are in a defending place, not really approaching somebody you're trying to defend. You can use tank like that. There's many scenarios. I'm pretty sure people can invent better technologies and engines. Even with that size can be somewhat maneuverable. Yeah, I think that's still gonna be there. Tank is a tank. Concept of something sturdy, heavy, and just in a attacking position has always existed long before, right? That's why forts work. That's why there are way too many forts whenever there's like defensing thing.
Breaking through them. But as missile and drone technologies continue to improve, the focus for tanks will be finding ways to stay on the move, rather than becoming target practice. This is no different from how cruise missiles change the way naval ships operate, or even how the bullets change the amount of armor a soldier wears. As the projectile hitting you gets better at breaking your armor,
Look at that, they're like, oh, we need to protect our thing rather than our leg. I don't care if I get shot in the thigh. Yeah, that center thing should be protected at all cost.
wears. As the projectile hitting you gets better at breaking your armor, the best defense is just avoiding it altogether.
Yeah, that's true. That has always been the case, right? If you don't get shot, it's not an issue. Many modern jets use that kind of like a mentality. But then again, US are known to be a tank, let's just say, in mentality, like how A-10 Warthog is. It's made to absorb bullets rather than avoid it. So I can see like how M1 Abrams can go insane size and everything, becomes something completely different. Russians has always been like trying to be fast, low, so they don't get shot and everything, right? Their autoloader thing, yeah, even though it might feel stupid, like Germans are doing it now too. People are gonna go through autoloader way, obviously. Yeah. Right, well, that was how Bradley IFVs proved more useful in Ukraine than tanks, but I'll know what you think. If you like my reaction, don't forget to subscribe. If you haven't seen other reactions like this, check out the link in the description or end card right now. I have Instagram if you want to follow me, so Twitter where I usually put links there. Yeah, I'll see you next time.